Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Cabinet Grants Panel being held on the 15th of March 2021 at 4 p.m. And we are joined today by officers of Democratic Services, Legal Services, Economic Development and Community Services, Policy and Performance. And I will call the roll call. First of all, Councillor Belsey.
Present.
Councillor Hillier.
Present.
Councillor Webster, I am indeed present. And I would like to invite Frank Currell to provide the virtual meeting explanation as the solicitor serving the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate most people, we have been undertaking remote meetings for quite some time, so I will hopefully be brief. They're not new. The regulations have been introduced to enable the Council to hold its meetings to include these participants attending remotely. The following procedures will apply to this meeting. During the meeting, all participants will be in control of their own microphone. You should set your microphone to mute until such time as the chairman invites you to speak. If you wish to speak, you should indicate by activating the raised hand function found at your participants list. The chairman has absolute discretion as to the order in which he invites participants to speak. When the chairman indicates you can speak, you must unmute your microphone. Once you've finished speaking, you will need to mute yourself again, and please also remember to lower your raised hand. If you have a declaration of interest for this meeting, this means you will need to leave the meeting. Please indicate this when the chairman asks. You will then be placed in a holding area and that you will not be able to participate in that matter on the agenda. When that item has been finished, you will be returned to the meeting. The voting during this meeting will be conducted by the yes or no buttons, and the chairman will explain further on this. The usual procedure for debates will apply to this meeting, and the chairman has absolute discretion. Thank you, Chairman. That concludes the virtual meeting explanation.
Thank you very much. And just to remind members, the green tick and the red cross can be found in the under the reactions button on the new Zoom layout. To note substitutes in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 4, we have no substitutes. Item 3, to receive apologies for absence. We have none as we are all here. Item 4, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. And I would like to kick that off by saying that under item 9, I have a declaration as I am Vice Chairman of the Dementia Friendly Community in East Grinstead, which is part of this application. So I will be absenting myself from the meeting at that point, and I would ask Councillor Hillier to take over there, please. Item 5, sorry, any other? Councillor Hillier.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a few here. In relation to the COVID business grants, the application from Community Inspired Richard Manville. I've had a very close working relationship with the company and the gentleman over a number of years. That probably means I should not comment on this item. And similarly, if we end up discussing in relation to the grants not award, similarly, the Kurana Centre. The other one is possibly needs some guidance on. I suspect I'm okay. It's in relation to, again, going back to the COVID business grants and the Sussex Chamber of Commerce. I am a committee member of the Haywards Heath Business Association, who has very recently become affiliate members of the Sussex Chamber. So I would like to think that wouldn't preclude me, but I'm happy to take advice. Coming later on the agenda to the grants, St Francis Sports and Social Club, whilst I'm not a member, I'm a regular user of the bar facilities. And again, I'll look for guidance as to whether I should be involved in that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Franca, could you just advise, please, on the Sussex Chamber of Commerce, please, for Councillor Hillier?
Yes, you've just joined, you say, Councillor Hillier, on that one.
The Hayward Heath Business Association has become an affiliate member, and I sit on the committee.
Thank you for that clarification. In that point, I would advise you not to participate in the discussions on that item. And also, with regards to the St Francis, using the facilities does not prevent you taking part in those discussions. If you were involved, say, on their committee, that would be another question. But you're just like everybody else using the facilities, so that's not a registrable interest. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think this is a registrable interest either, but just from a transparency perspective, I just wanted to declare that I am a member of the East Grinstead Tennis and Rackets Club, which has made an application. But I'm just an ordinary member and not on the committee, but I just thought it was helpful to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 5, to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the panel held on the 26th of January. Could you please indicate your acceptance or not by using the buttons? Thank you. Those minutes are accepted. Item 6, to consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I believe we have one particular application coming up for the Burgess Hill Cricket Club, which will be introduced at the appropriate time. Emma, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Chairman.
Great, thank you. Item 7, to receive representations from members of the Council on the applications. Colleagues, have you received any representations? Councillor Belsey.
I have received an email from Frank Osborne, a trustee of Chequermead, just asking whether we would consider their application for Chequermead, given their difficult financial position. They hoped that we would be able to consider it favourably.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey. Councillor Osborne is indeed a town councillor in East Grinstead, but he is not a councillor of this council. So I have also received the same email from him, but I've subsequently had a conversation with Councillor Rex Whitaker, who is a councillor of this council, and I think you and I are very well aware of the difficulties that Chequermead have experienced during lockdown, and the fact that they have to date not qualified for any grant applications that they have submitted to anybody, including the government, and they have continued to exist thanks to their own efforts alone. And I would ask officers if they could possibly engage with Councillor Whitaker and encourage Chequermead to submit an application in good time for something within their summer events program, because they have a number of additional expenses that they will be incurring for their summer events program, and indeed later in the year as well, subject of course to the pandemic situation as the year rolls on. But they do clearly need some careful guidance in what they apply for and how they apply for it. And I know they would appreciate some assistance very much. Thank you. Item 8, the COVID-19 Recovery Grant Scheme. And I'm going to ask Caroline Duffy to introduce this. But before I do, could I please issue a plea to anybody who may be watching this broadcast that if you are a business in East Grinstead, Haywards Heath, Burgess Hill, or indeed any of the villages in mid-Sussex, and you are in need of grant assistance, please do submit a COVID-19 business grant application to midssussex.grantapproval.co.uk, because we have approximately £10 million left of government grant funding, which will need to be returned to government if it's not claimed by the 31st of March. And I know that Councillor Hillier would join me in being very reluctant to send that money anywhere else but to businesses within mid-Sussex. So please do submit your applications as soon as possible. Caroline.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, everybody. This is the second meeting of the Cabinet Grants Panel to review applications under the Council's COVID-19 Recovery Grant Scheme. As you'll be aware, under this scheme, the Council provided £300,000 of its own funds to provide grants of up to £5,000 to community and business organisations for activity associated with COVID-19 recovery. The scheme itself launched on the 30th of October and closed to the first round of applications on the 30th of November. These applications were reviewed at the panel in December. At that panel meeting, we had 22 businesses and 26 community organisations who were successfully awarded funding in that first round. It came to just under 148,000 funding, which meant that there was some funding available for a second round of applications. So we immediately opened to a second round of applications until the 15th of January. This report presents the 34 applications we've received from businesses for funding in this second round. The applications received from community organisations are being presented separately. We received 4 applications from businesses that have recently been successfully awarded a 2020-21 micro business grant at the Cabinet Grants Panel at the end of January, and subsequently they have not been recommended for additional funding from this COVID-19 recovery grant scheme. Of the remaining 30 applications, 20 of these are being recommended to the panel for funding. 10 of these applications not being recommended included 1 out-of-area application, a further 6 that weren't eligible under the criteria of the scheme. They were either seeking funds for retrospective costs or funds relating to the general day-to-day running costs or business as usual, or were just not deemed to meet the COVID-19 specific recovery criteria. All of the applications have been individually assessed and applications have been scored against an assessment criteria, a copy of which can be found in Appendix B to the report. Officers have applied a minimum score of 7, which is approximately 50% of the maximum score of 15 that an application could receive as a minimum to be recommended for funding. As a result, we had 3 applications that scored low. In actual fact, they scored 4 out of 15 and they haven't been recommended for funding. In addition to the assessment criteria, all applications have undergone a due diligence process whereby we've worked very closely with colleagues in the Revenues and Benefits team, mirroring the processes they adhere to when administering the national grants, and we've continued to work closely with them throughout. So where it hasn't been possible to fund an application under this scheme, we are still working very closely with the Revenues and Benefits team to direct those businesses to any of the national funding that might be available. And as you'll be aware, there are numerous different national grants available for different time periods and different criteria. So in many instances, it may be that actually people can put in more than one application. So we're going to work closely with all those businesses to wherever they are eligible, secure them some additional funding. A couple of things to note since the publication of the papers, in particular, the Sussex Chamber of Commerce has amended the value of the grant they are seeking to 4,000, not the 5,000. They've withdrawn one of the projects that they were seeking funding for. One other thing to note, although this is mentioned in the report, but just to draw your attention to the fact that in one instance, the amount that we're recommending for funding for Tamarind is lower than their original request, because on further investigation of that, the equipment purchases they were looking for are retrospective, they've already been bought. So they're only progressing with the website aspect of their application. Broadly speaking, we've received applications from a very broad geographic area and a broad variety of sectors. And similar to last time, it's been really encouraging to see applications coming forward from businesses that have been in particular adversely hit by COVID-19. Where the projects primarily focus on helping the businesses to either diversify their offer, promote the business, or to operate more efficiently and effectively in the new post-COVID economic landscape. We would therefore ask the panel to consider and approve the recommended applications and also those not recommended for funding as set out in Appendix A.
Thank you very much. And I should say that the pie chart on page 16 of the report is a very useful indicator of the wide geographic area from which we have received grants across Mid-Sussex. And I should also point out, remind colleagues that this is funded by Mid-Sussex District Council's own money. Is there anything, Councillor Belsey, that you wish to say about any of the the applications that Councillor Hillier has declared any interest in? No. Do either of you have any questions? Councillor Hillier.
You obviously saw me moving towards my electronic hand. Thank you, Chair. Alert as ever. I have no questions. I just wanted to briefly make some comments. I just thought it'd be appropriate, this sitting within my portfolio. First of all, thank you, Chairman, and thoroughly endorse your comments around doing all we can to assume that the £10 million remaining is appropriately allocated. Thank you very much indeed for that. And in relation to this item, and obviously notwithstanding those items I should be precluded from, one would feel I ought to have a great deal to say, but actually I don't. Obviously, we've had communications with the officers, and I am, as have been throughout the whole of COVID, thoroughly impressed with the quality of the work, the efforts they have gone to with the businesses to help them get appropriate funding. Where not applicable for one, they have given their best, as they have indicated, to allocate. So I think this has been an outstanding piece of work. I think not only have we distributed the funds quickly, we've also taken great care, unlike some authorities that we hear about, to ensure that they do go to the appropriate place. So I am very happy to agree the recommendations, and I'm very grateful to all concerned for the work that they have done. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier, and I echo those sentiments of yours. I think officers have worked exceedingly hard, also in the revenues and benefits area, particularly where they've worked 7 days a week, it seems, for months and months and months to process grants. And officers here today have also worked very, very hard over an extended period of time. And I do hope that we are beginning to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Councillor Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, endorsing your comments and that pie chart, which was great to see such good, so many slices for the first, which is really good. And I was going to say, just putting these items with the previous applications that we've seen, I think it's been a really useful opportunity for Mid Sussex to help so many different businesses within the towns, obviously community organisations as well, but towns and villages. It seems like a really good spread. The only question, just as Caroline was talking, that came up was I hadn't really appreciated that if you'd had a micro business grant in the last year, it meant you were precluded from qualifying for the COVID grant. And obviously the micro business grants only go up to 2,000, and some of the grant applications are up to 5,000. So if they'd have had the choice, I'm sure some people would have rather gone with the COVID application as opposed to the micro business if it qualified. So I was just interested whether I know we had made clear that there were certain criteria to meet that an applicant had to make in order to put in a suitable application. So I was just really checking that we'd advised businesses up front if they'd had a micro business grant that they then weren't eligible for the COVID grant. So that was my only question, just because they're different amounts.
Caroline.
To answer Councillor Balsey, just to clarify on the micro business grant and the COVID-19, it wasn't specifically they would be excluded from applying. What we found in most instances, obviously, that businesses have pretty much applied for everything that they could, which obviously we've encouraged them to do. As we've said, we want to make sure we distribute as many funds as we can. In this, because this was the second round of the grants, we were in a situation where we were up to the maximum, in fact, over the maximum funds. So we did have to make some difficult decisions in terms of who we fund. The micro business applications that came through were at the end of last year. So that fund had closed at the end of November, albeit they were awarded at the panel in January, whereas this second round didn't in actual fact open until the 15th of December. So they had already applied for their micro business grant at that point. So that was therefore assessed first. The other thing that might be of interest is that actually in those most cases, I think bar one, they were actually for the same project. So we obviously wouldn't be in a situation where we would fund both. And the timing was such that the micro business grants closed at the end of last year. So then they did a subsequent application for the COVID-19. It came in that order.
Thank you. So basically you're telling me that by doing what we've done, it's allowed us to help even more businesses than would otherwise have been the case. And we've allowed us, as you said, when we were at capacity anyway, in terms of the applications. So we just did the best we could. That's very helpful. Thank you very much, Caroline.
Thank you. And I think it's also worth noting that it's been a moving goalposts over the last 12 months continuously, to such an extent that the goalposts probably were never taken off the back of the truck that they were located on. But we've managed to see ourselves and our businesses and charity sector through to this stage with as much care and assistance as we possibly can. Can we please vote en bloc on all of these applications? Franca, are we permitted to do that?
I think the best way to do is to vote on the ones that Councillor Hillier is able to vote on, and then do it in two sections, if that makes sense. And then yes.
Okay, thank you. So we will vote on all applications bar Sussex Chamber of Commerce, the Community Inspired Limited. I think that was it, Councillor Hillier.
It was, although on the recommended not to proceed, there was a Qur'an Centre, but I'm not sure if that needs to be included. Thank you.
No, okay. We will vote on all of them bar those two. Thank you. And that is all three have voted to approve those applications. And can we now vote, Councillor Balsey, can you and I please vote on the community inspired and Sussex Chamber of Commerce. Thank you. That 2 is unanimous of a vote of 2. And can we move on now to agenda item 9, please? And that is to be introduced by Emma Sheridan.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. This report follows on from the previous one in terms of COVID grant, but this time outlining the 20 applications that were received from the community and voluntary sector organisations in this second round. As members will see, it's a broad range of requests from quite a wide variety of organisations that support the CSV sector across the district. We have 5 bids for facility improvements to enable social distancing and COVID safe operation. 2 specifically for village halls to improve their digital offer to allow them to broadcast and stream activities and events to a wider audience. A further 5 organisations overall increasing their digital offer. 2 requesting support with the purchase of PPE to continue activities. 3 activities which are new or changed delivery as a result of COVID. I'd like to draw members' particular attention to the bid request for dementia support from an alliance of the 3 dementia organisations across the district. This was an application that was initially shared with members at the first round. We deferred it at that time in the hope that we might be able to secure alternative funding for these groups under some various different health funds that we thought might be available at that time. Officers have exhausted all of those opportunities, and because of, in light of certain criteria for different funding streams, it was not possible to fund the activities that were being asked for. And so we are bringing that back to members today with a request to fund those 3 organisations as an alliance, which is the reason why it's an application for 15 rather than 5, because it's actually 3 separate organisations working together. So it's presented as such. So with that, we'd like members to consider the recommendations for approval of the grants as set out in Table 1. We have 3 grants that were submitted that are not recommended for approval simply because they did not meet the criteria for this specific grant fund. However, officers do note the comments made by the chairman at the start of the meeting and absolutely will commit to engaging with Chequer Meads Art and Community Trust to support them with a future grant, potentially through the Community and Economic Development Grants Fund, should that be possible in the next round. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Emma. And I should have said before we started on this item that, Caroline, if you wish to leave the meeting in the interests of productivity and go on to other duties, please feel free to do so. Colleagues, do you have any questions apart from the dementia-friendly communities? Because if you do have any questions on the dementia-friendly communities item, I will ask Democratic Services to remove me from the room. So, do you have any questions on any of the applications at all? Or indeed on the 3 that were refused? No, thank you. Can we then move to the vote, please? And thank you, that is again unanimous. Thank you very much, Emma. And can we move to Franca, I'm sorry, do we need to have a separate vote on the dementia item?
Yes, I was just looking at that, Chairman. Yes, I think if we can separate it out for openness and transparency, that would be useful, Chairman. And
do I need to be removed from the room?
Just take your earplugs out. No, seriously. No, that will be fine. If Councillor Hillier will take the chair, that will be fine.
Okay, thank you. Over to you, Councillor Hillier.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. Just to raise the same query. So in relation to the Havensheath Friendly Dementia, which I think is an excellent application, and I look forward to seeing how those monies are spent. I think this is a truly worthwhile cause. Councillor Belsey, do you have any comments or questions, or can we move to the vote? Then we'll move to the vote just to yourself and I. We will. Thank you very much, Councillor Belsey. That is unanimous. That also is passed, and I'm happy to send the chair back your way, Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Councillor Hillier. And I do want to just say thank you to Emma Sheridan for the very useful, in this case, donut, showing the distribution of grant applications across the district. And if we could move on to agenda item 10, the corporate grant scheme release of section 106 contributions. Elaine Clark, please.
Oh yes, thank you very much. This paper is about the facility grant scheme for capital projects. We didn't have any new applications that came in time to be considered in this funding round. So the paper that's presented is a review of all of the grants that were live that were being monitored during the previous year. There were 21 applications. 7 of those have been completed and paid in full. 7 of them are ongoing. 1 was withdrawn, and 6 of those applications or projects have been affected by COVID and are seeking extensions to the grant conditions that were previously agreed by the panel. So of those, 2 of those projects are already underway. The Burgess Hill Town Council one is pretty much complete. There's just 1 minor piece of work that they need to finish that they haven't been able to do because of COVID. And with the same with the East Grinstead Rugby Football Club, that project, they've drawn down over half the grant already and done a significant amount of the work, but there's some still to complete. Of the others, the St Francis one we discussed at the last panel meeting and agreed to divide that project into 2 stages. And the first stage is now ready to go ahead. So the paper really is just clarifying the time frame for delivering that work. And the other 3 are all projects that haven't yet started on site, and the applicants have been allowed a certain amount of time to fundraise to secure all of the money needed to deliver the project. And unfortunately, a lot of external funding is now directed specifically at COVID, which is making it more challenging for them. They haven't been able to run the kind of events that they might do normally. So they have all asked for extensions of time. And the only one that is a little bit that may need to come back to the panel is the tennis club, because the costs on that one have also increased. So they're looking at potentially refurbishing rather than rebuilding in accordance with the planning permission that they've currently got. So if that project changes, we'll bring a revised scheme back to the panel. And I should just note that there's an error in the paperwork in Appendix A, because I've made this comment about the rugby club project, but the recommendation in the paper is correct. It's the tennis club that will bring forward a revised proposal potentially. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, any questions? I just wanted to highlight the facilities grant for Crawley Down Cricket Club, which has previously been extended, and that is extended until November this year.
Yes, and I've had some communication with them recently. They felt that was sufficient to allow them to deliver the project, so they haven't asked for an extension.
Okay, thank you. And if we could please vote our acceptance or not. I'm sorry, Councillor Balsey, I didn't see you in the top left corner.
No, that's right. No, I was just going to comment just on the release of the funds just for the branch line. So obviously that was £50,000 that had been going towards Beechhurst, but that funding is now not required. So it did go back into the wider Haywards Heath pot for use for the other public facilities.
Yes, that's correct. That money will be allocated to other projects in the Haywards Heath area. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Balsey. A good point that as that money has not been spent, it'll go back into the Haywards Heath pot. And if we could please vote our acceptance. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. And if we could move on to agenda item 11, the corporate grant scheme, community and economic development grants, to be introduced by Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. This report brings us back to our usual Cabinet Grants programme, that of the Community and Economic Development Grants, which is an annual grants programme that the Council runs. We have had a couple of applications, although I would like to draw members' attention to an error on the report. It does actually list a grant request for Hurstpierpoint Allotment Association, which the keen-eyed among you will have noticed has already been covered in the previous report. So apologies for that. That money was allocated previously, has been spent, and is providing very useful facilities for that community. In addition, however, as was provided as a supplementary paper to members, we did receive a further application from Burgess Hill Cricket Club, which, due to technical issues on the council's part, nothing to do with the cricket club's submission, which was made on time, but due to some IT technical problems, it didn't make it through the system to us until relatively recently. Officers didn't feel that it was fair on the cricket club to not present the application here to members, as they had actually submitted it on time. So we have two applications. One is for Disability Access East Grinstead, which provides a very useful advice and support service to carers on disability access. And then the Cricket Club application, which is to purchase a triple blade sit-on mower to support the club in taking over the maintenance of the cricket grounds, which is currently has previously been something that was funded by the council. So in the longer term, this would represent a saving on overall council budgets. Very happy to take any questions that members might have on either of those, or indeed on the applications for which we are not recommending a grant, most of which are because they do not meet the criteria for this grant programme, or suitable or have been historically funded in numerous ways in their current form, and therefore as a result don't meet the new criteria that was agreed by this panel at the end of last year.
Thank you, Emma. Are there any questions, colleagues? Councillor Hillier.
Thank you, Chairman. I have one. It applies generally, but I'm thinking in particular the last item, the Burgess Hill mower, and it's great to be able to support this. Will there be any kind of, is it feasible to expect any kind of badging or something that just indicates that this money has come from Mid Sussex District Council? It's a frequent thing I think us councillors raise, is that we provide funding, etc. And sometimes I think the community are unaware of exactly how much this council does in that respect. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Hillier, as part of our grant award letters and agreements with community organisations, we do require that it is recognised where the funding has come from, and certainly for large amounts such as this, it would be customary for our logo to be displayed.
Good, thank you very much. And cricket pitches are notoriously temperamental things. So I'm assuming, and they vary dramatically in standard. So I'm assuming that the field pitch has been assessed by somebody externally to its sort of standard of care at the moment, because I understand it's a shared surface as well.
That's correct, Councillor Webster. It has been independently assessed, and at the time of handover was assessed as good.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. If we can then go to the vote, please. Thank you, that's unanimous. And unless anybody has anything else to say, I will declare the meeting closed. And again, I would like to thank you all for your preparation for this meeting and for your participation today. Thank you. And the time is 16:41. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.